Welcome to the very first ever Warhammer 40K creepypasta. I am your host Gershwan and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. For quite some time now we've been saying that we're going to start narrative campaigns, and this is a way for us to get into that narrative flow. We want to start creating stories, our own stories, set in the Warhammer 40K universe, but in order to do that we need practice. So this is our way of finding out how long it's going to take to produce videos like this, and also just learn better storytelling techniques, because this is our first time ever trying to create our own stories. What you're going to see is that every other week we're going to be putting out narrative stories. Now at first they're going to be mostly creepypastas because they seem to be the most entertaining to write, and slowly we're going to work our way up to those giant narrative campaigns. Now you're going to get one free one on YouTube, and there's going to be an extra one for all our patrons. If you want to help the channel, if you want to see more Warhammer 40K content, simply jump on over to our Patreon page. It's $1 a month and you get all exclusive videos. So you get the Greater Wall and you get creepypastas and any other narrative campaigns. I'm trying to improve my narrative skills, so please comment down below with any critiques or suggestions that would help you enjoy the story better. With that said, let's get to the very first Warhammer 40K creepypasta. The sun was beginning to set as Miko was returning to his barn atop of his harvester tractor. He looked out at what he believed to be the most beautiful sight. Fields upon fields of farmland, gifted to Miko by the God Emperor himself. It was his duty to tend to these fields, and it was a duty he held very dear to his heart. Miko had never seen anything beyond this beautiful Agriworld, but he knew from what the adepts of the Administratum told him that his work touched the entire Imperium. It had not been easy to farm this land all alone after the cutbacks of labor sanctioned by the Administratum, or the unexpected death of his wife. But Miko had managed to continue to meet the yield requirements for the last 2 years, and he felt confident that with the divine guidance of the God Emperor, he would continue to prosper in the years to come. As Miko parked the tractor and put away all his tools, he was distracted by a small steady stream of smoke coming from across the field. It was the home of his new neighbors. They too were settling in after a day of hard work, or at least that's what he thought. Not all farmers had been so lucky as he was. After the labor cutbacks, his previous neighbors had missed the yearly yield requirements, and they lost their privilege of tending the Emperor's land. Miko wondered what happened to that family. He still remembers the delicious dinner the family had cooked for him, as a thank you for helping them out during the start of the harvest. When Miko returned to give back the plates, their home was empty. The Administratum, or their subordinates, must have picked them up. Wherever they may be, he was sure that the Emperor would watch over them. Having new neighbors meant he had to go introduce himself. If he hurried, he would be able to reach their home right before sundown. He quickly stored away his tools and ordered his harvester Servitor to finish its last action and power down for the night. He hopped on his bicycle and headed down the dirt path toward his new neighbor's house. Miko made it just in time. He rode up to the front of the neighbor's house just as the sun slightly peeked across the horizon. Unfortunately for him, he did not receive the welcome he thought he would. Miko walked up to the house and happily introduced himself to the 2 teenage boys that were sitting in the front porch. Neither of them said a word, they simply just stared. He looked over to the front door and saw a pregnant woman, who he assumed to be the mother of the boys, but she didn't say anything either. She simply locked the door and stood silently. Around the corner of the house came a man, about the same height as Miko and similar build. Miko introduced himself again, and this time the man returned the introduction. Ron was the man's name. He introduced his wife and 2 kids, and thanked Miko for coming by to welcome them. He apologized for his family's apprehension, but he explained that they were simply shy. Miko got a strange vibe from Ron and his family. Ron seemed closed off, not wanting to discuss his previous home or anything about their family's past. He mostly talked about the condition the house was left in and the quality of tools left behind. What Miko found most peculiar was when Ron mentioned he did not have any row covers for next year, and Miko said he had seen some left behind in the barn. The 2 boys jumped up and ran towards the barn to close the 2 large doors. Something about mentioning the barn triggered the boys' bizarre actions. What was in that barn, Miko wondered. Whatever it was, Ron knew that the boys' action had alerted Miko, or at least planted a seed of suspicion. By that point, the sun was down, and Ron used that as an excuse to send Miko back to his home. As Miko rode his bike back, he couldn't help but continue looking over his shoulder. The bizarre first impression of the new neighbors was a chilling realization that not everyone held the same devotion to the kindness and duty of the Emperor. As a matter of fact, Miko never once heard Ron thank the Emperor for his new home or farmland. Nevertheless, Miko was happy to be back home, and he stored away his bicycle as his stomach began to growl. He had missed dinner, and the bike ride only added to his hunger. As he walked from the barn to the house, he realized there was movement in the fields. Perhaps a scavenger eating his crops. As he got closer, he realized this was no common pest. Whatever it was much larger. The familiar sound of pistons shooting off was a huge relief to Miko. It was his harvester Servitor, still working in the fields. Miko must have forgotten to order him to power off before he left. He approached the Servitor and gave the order to finish off whatever it was doing and shut down for the night. The Servitor stopped its task, immediately turned around to look at Miko, and retracted its harvester sights. Miko had had enough for the day. He was ready to eat. After a well-deserved meal and a warm bath, Miko was finally in bed. He laid there, thinking about Ron and his family. Perhaps he was over-judgmental of their actions. It had been so long since Miko had socialized with someone new. Ron and his family had every right to be apprehensive to a stranger. Ron was a lucky man to still have his family. Miko began to reminisce of his wife and his hope to be granted permission by the administratum to start a family. He put a lot of hard work into improving his house, making sure it was spacious enough for the big family his wife and him dreamed of. Unfortunately, the Emperor had different plans, and now he went to bed every night, all alone, in a large, empty house. A loud, strange noise came from outside. Miko quickly got out of bed and peered out of his window. He could not see anything out of the ordinary. He had a perfect view of his neighbor's house and barn from the second-story window of his bedroom. Nothing out of the ordinary there either. The home was completely dark, like it should be during this time of night. Suddenly, Miko saw a small light that looked like it was coming from a small candle. It came out of the neighbor's house and into the barn. What reason could there be for something to go into the barn at this time of night? Whatever it was, Miko was going to find out, but he decided his best bet would be to report the strange occurrence to the administratum. There would be no sense in attempting to snoop around his neighbor's home. Miko returned to bed and fell asleep. Miko was awoken by a strange noise coming from outside his home. It sounded like scratching, and he could tell it was coming from the front of the house. It was a sound that he had never heard before, but the longer he listened, the more he could tell it was coming from right his front door. Miko laid in bed, wondering if he should investigate, but suddenly the sound stopped. Perhaps it was the trees in front of his home. Miko tried his best to reason with himself over the strange noise. 15 minutes passed, and Miko was drifting off to sleep. His paranoia would not get the best of him, he thought. The noise returned. Miko laid as silent as possible, slowing down his breath so he could hear the sound better. Shivers ran down his back as he realized the noise was not coming from outside anymore. The sound was coming from down the stairs, near the front of the door. Miko sat up and looked out of his bedroom door into the hallway. The sound continued. Miko slowly stood up and walked to the front of the doorway. He slowly took a step out into the hallway, hoping the floor wouldn't creak. Whoever it was, Miko wanted to take it by surprise. He took another step toward the staircase. He could feel his heartbeat pounding against his chest. Miko froze as he realized the sound was coming from the end of the staircase. Whoever it was coming for him. Miko realized he had no plan or weapon to defend himself. He slowly stepped back into his room and shut the door. He looked around his room and found a tall wooden candle holder. There was no reasonable doubt that whoever was coming for him was right outside his door. 5 minutes passed by, but to Miko, it felt like an eternity. He stood in his bedroom, staring at the door, waiting for another scratch, but nothing happened. Miko finally gained the courage and spoke out. He said, "Listen, Ron, I apologize if I startled you earlier, but coming into my house without my permission is uncalled for. In the name of the God Emperor, I will report you for your misconduct to the Administratum. Now, unless you want trouble with them, I suggest you open my door, apologize, and return to your home." No response. Another 5 minutes passed in silence. Finally, Miko gathered the courage and reached for the doorknob. He slowly opened the door. Miko was thrown back into his room as the Harvester Servitor barreled into the room. Hissing engines and horrible gurgling noises filled the room as the Servitor shot out its Harvester sights and began to swing at Miko. Miko was able to escape the first swings, but the speed of the Servitor was too much. He was cut on his left shoulder and right thigh. Miko looked for the wooden candle holder, but couldn't find it. It must have rolled underneath his bed. Again, the Servitor swung, and again Miko tried his best to evade, but caught a deep cut across his face. Blood began to drip down his face as he tried his best to fight back the Servitor, but the Harvester Servitor's augmented body was too strong for a human to harm. Miko couldn't comprehend how or why his Servitor was attacking him. Program protocol would never allow a Servitor to attack a human being. Unexpectedly, Miko heard a human scream, and then a pitchfork, coming from the hallway, flew across the room and landed into the Servitor's body. The two neighbor boys ran in with pitchforks in hand and stabbed the stunned Servitor, leaving the farm tools jabbed inside the Servitor's body. They picked up Miko, and all three ran down the stairs and out of the house. Miko's adrenaline allowed him to follow the boys back to their home. When they arrived, they ran into the barn instead of the house. Miko fell over in exhaustion. He could feel the blood running out of his wounds, but the pain was being blocked off by his body's shock response. Miko looked up and saw the neighbor's Servitor tied up and half alive in the corner of the barn. Black ink-looking fluid covered the floor around the tied-up machine. Miko asked the boys if the Servitor had attacked them as well. The two boys looked at each other, and one began to explain that their dad was attacked by the Servitor on their first day at the house. The Servitor refused to follow orders to shut down, and when their father attempted to power it off, the Servitor attacked. Luckily, their dad was able to defend himself and trap the machine. As the boy was finishing up the story, Ron walked into the barn. He looked at Miko and looked at the boys with an angry expression on his face. Miko explained that his Servitor had gone crazy and just attacked him as well. His boys arrived just in time to save him. Miko stood up and explained if it wasn't for his boys, he wouldn't be alive. Ron smiled and walked toward his boys. The boys walked back, trying to keep their distance from Ron. Ron reassured the boys not to be scared and looked at Miko. He said, "These boys saved my life too. They were able to fight off the Servitor." Miko looked at the boys, and the boys looked at their dad. Miko asked why did the boys say that Ron fought the Servitor. There was a tense silence, and Ron said it didn't matter who killed what. The important thing is that the Servitors are now dead, and they can move on with their lives. Miko explained they needed to ride into town and notify the authorities of the malfunctioning Servitors. Ron responded with approval and walked over to Miko. Miko got a weird feeling from the approaching man. He felt uneasy. It could have been the loss of blood, or maybe the adrenaline wearing off, but something pushed Miko to step back from Ron and told him to get away. Ron snarled at the action and looked at his boys. You shouldn't have saved him. Now he's going to be a bigger problem than he should. Ron grabbed a large mallet and ran towards Miko, ready to smash his head in with the weapon. The boys ran and tackled their dad. "Don't kill him, Dad. We don't want any more violence." The boys were able to pin him down, and Miko used the small strength he had to toss a rope over to the boys, which they used to tie him up. "What just happened?" Miko exclaimed to the boys. Just then, the mother came into the barn, holding onto her belly. It startled Miko to see that she didn't look surprised, as someone should they be walking into a room where her tied-up husband and bloodied neighbor would be. She smiled at the boys and said, "Let your father loose. Your brother is very mad at you two," as she rubbed her belly. The mother looked at Miko and said, "My boys haven't told you the truth because they were scared you might think our family was crazy and you might hurt us. But no one can hurt us now. Not as long as my baby boy is here. You see, me and my family were blessed. I was given the divine duty of carrying the supreme malevolent master. He is my son, the Lord of the Galaxy, and the one who will cast down the false god. His power is getting stronger and stronger by the day. He was the one that blessed these machines you call servitors with the gift of divine guidance." The mother looked at the boys and said, "I already told you once, let these machines do what your brother has ordered them to do. I am very disappointed in you too. Now I'm not going to ask you again. Free your father and kill this man. Your brother is asking you to do this." Miko realized he was too weak to even try to run away, much less to defend himself from the boys and their father. He looked at the boys and pleaded, "Boys, please do not do what your mother has said. She is not right in her mind. How could you turn away from the light of the Emperor? We could stay calm and get help. Like you said, there shouldn't be any more violence. We will safely restrain her, and no harm will come to anyone here. The proper authorities could handle this." Miko hoped he could reason with the boys. The mother angrily responded, "Do not anger your little brother anymore. If you don't, stop." Miko interrupted, "Boys, your family will be safer if you stop and get help. By the name of the God Emperor, please listen to me. Let him guide you. If you simply..." Miko's body fell to the floor. His crushed skull splattered all over the floor. Parts of his brain still hung from the hands of the harvester servitor standing above him. The machine had snuck up behind him. The pitchfork still stabbed in its body. One of the boys fell to his knees. The other stood in shock. The mother simply smiled and said, "Don't be scared, boys. Your little brother doesn't want to hurt you. Otherwise, he would have sent his servitors after you two. But don't push your luck. Next time, do as I say. Now one of you untie your dad, and the other can untie the other servitor. We don't have to hide him anymore." The mother walked back to the house with the dark servitor guarding her and his unborn master. And that was our first creepypasta. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, comment down below with any suggestions, anything that you guys have to criticize about the way the story was told. Like I said, I'm trying to build on my narrative skills so that I can give you guys those awesome narrative campaigns. And then also make any suggestions for ideas of what you guys would like to hear about or see in a creepypasta within the Warhammer 40K universe. So you have like demon worlds, you have Tyranid invasions, all that kind of stuff. Comment down below and just give me ideas. That way we can play around with cool stories. And again, check out our Patreon page because we have creepypasta there, and it's talking about rogue traders and the craziness, the creepiness that you encounter as a rogue trader outside the Imperium's borders. So please jump on over to Patreon. The link is going to be down below in the description or at the end of the video, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.